Hi everyone, this is Sharon. Today I have a prayer journal to share with you. This is a custom order for Kimberly. And what I did for this one is I decided to tie it up with this creamy velvet ribbon for the tie. And then I also cinched that with this vintage brass buckle. It's got a couple little rhinestones in there. And then I also hung this beautiful gold cross from there. And then for the cover of the journal, I used this beautiful old book from the 1870s. It's a little cracked and chippy, but I just love it. I think it's so beautiful. This is the front, and then the back has some beautiful embossing as well. I created this spine out of this tapestry fabric, and then I just added these lace pieces on there. And then I also added a little bit of lace on the top and the bottom to trim it out. It has 7 signatures. I might have to move my camera up. No, I think we can get it in there. I will leave the dimensions and the number of pages in my description below, so you can check that out if you're interested in seeing exactly what size it is. As we move on to the inside, I mixed quite a few different digital artists in this journal. I would say the Paper Cameo is the one I use the most. I just incorporated some of her newer Ave Maria kits in here that I just acquired, and a number of other ones as well. For the inside covers, I use these beautiful Italian documents from Roxy Creations. So I've got that one on the front, and then this is a label from the Paper Cameo. And then on the back, I've got this letter and another label. For my spine, I lined the inside with this French ticking fabric. On the first page, I have this pocket made from some waxed straw paper. And then I just added this beautiful angel image on the front and then hung a religious medal and some beads off the side. And then I've got some beautiful old lace across the top. And then in that pocket, I have this tag that I made. A little pocket on the back. If you see me wearing a Band-Aid in any of my videos, just assume that I've tried to use the oven. On this page, I've got a shallow side tuck, and then I'll let you see the beautiful pages behind as well. And then in there, I've tucked this little card that I made and a book page on some wildflowers. And then I got a number of these book pages. It came from an art book, but there were a lot of religious images in the art book. And so this is one of the pages that I pulled, and then I just did a little stamping on the back. On this page, I used this beautiful blue ledger paper for my page, and then I added, this is my new favorite washi tape. It's from Lace Boutique 1. I absolutely love the colors and the pattern. And then on the side of this page, I just clipped this little tag that I made. And this is from Raindrop Lila, one of her Bible verses. And then this just folds out, and then I left the dictionary page on the back, and then this little margin could be used for some writing room. On this side of the page, I created this little flip and added some lace along the side of that, and then I created this card. I backed it with some cheesecloth and put a little die-cut cross on there and did some stamping. Then I just added this beautiful old French book page, or is it French? Nope, I think that one might be Italian. Here I use this beautiful page from the Paper Cameo and just did a little collaging with some stenciled paste and old paper. On this page, I've got this pretty image, and then some, this is one of the original book pages from the cover that I used. And then here I created this card, and I just backed this image onto some Florentine paper, and this just flips up for some nice writing room on the inside. In the middle of the signature, I added a couple of small buttons on my strings, and then I created these fabric pockets with this beautiful old French fabric. And then I did some collaging behind there just to reinforce the book pages a little bit. So I added this vintage envelope, and this might have been, I think this was a piece of paper I found in the book. And then I created these two tags, some beautiful images from Tailor-Made Journals. And this back piece is also from one of her kits. I think it's like a shabby lace kit. And then I backed them with some painter's paper and added this dotted sari on the top. Here on this page, I created this large tag and just added some lace to the bottom. Love that image. And then I backed it with this old French paper. Here I've got another flip out. I just added this beautiful fabric as my tab. And then in there I created this card with the bird on. And then on the back, I've got this lined tissue. It's like almost like a tracing paper, but it has lines on it that you could use for writing. And then I've got this piece of beautiful old German music paper in there as well. Here on this page, I've clipped on this floating pocket. So this is the image. This is what the page looks like. And then in there, I tucked this tag, St. Michael. And then in the back, I've got another little pocket. And then I put in this prayer card. On this page, I created a top tuck, and then in there, I added this journaling page, did some pretty stenciling on the back. On this page, I left this beautiful image on there and just embellished a little bit with some ribbons and a little bit of bling. This page, got this beautiful image on the back, and then this really pretty lace for my belly band. And then in there I tucked this card that I made. And then this is a letter that I put on some tracing paper. On this page I made a side tuck with this medallion piece, and then in there I tucked in this Easter postcard, and this is a page from a book on architecture, Italian architecture. This is a beautiful old book page that I've had, and I just glued it onto another page just to give it a little bit more structure. And then on this side, there's another art image from the art book that I have. In the center, I added this pretty paper doily. And then this page is something I was gifted from Wynette of Wynette's Crafting Corner. It's a beautiful, crinkly page. I believe it came out of a Book of Mormon, and I think it's in Arabic, she said. Just a beautiful piece of paper. And on this side, I've clipped on a little journaling card, a prayer card type that I made. Here I just added a wax seal and some fabric to that page. This is a die cut that I got recently and just put that piece on that page. And then over here I've got this belly band, some beautiful background paper. And then in there I have this piece that I made. I just tied it up with some twine, added a little eyelet here on my flap for my string. And then on the inside, I've got a little side pocket here with a bookmark in there. And then I've got some papers in here for writing, kind of like a little mini journal. And then I backed it with this beautiful image. And this is just a page from a flower book that I have. Here I created this bottom corner pocket with a handkerchief, some pretty tatting on there. That's what the pages look like. And then in there I have this piece, another little folder type thing that I made. I've got this little band here to kind of keep this belt in place, but basically you just need to slide that to the side, and then these are overlapping each other, so that can pull off. And then inside here, I just added a couple of pockets, and I've inserted some small little journaling cards that I made. Some beautiful images. And this one. Here's another pocket that I made from some waxed straw paper, and I just added this little image on there. And then in the pocket I've got an original prayer card. I think this is an older one. And then this is just a little prayer page from a prayer book. Here I clipped on this beautiful angel image, and I just stapled it to a little prayer page again from a small prayer book. On this page I created this top tuck with this image, and I just laid this piece of linen over the top. And then in there I've got this beautiful image of a rose that came from a rose book that I have. And I stitched that to the page describing the roses. On this side of the page, I created a flip out with this angel image. And then there's some writing room underneath there. And then in there, I tucked this journaling card that I made. Backed it with this beautiful gold fabric that I got from my friend Catherine. And I just created this corner tuck and put a little tag in there. Here I've got some nice old French music paper, and I just clipped over the side of that page this double tag. It opens up, if I can find the right side. There we go. So there's some writing room on the inside, and these are some beautiful tags from the paper cameo. Here I created a top tuck with this beautiful kind of like an embroidered linen image that's from Christy at Everlasting Journals. And then this is the page underneath. And then in there, I just put this image from a religious book in here. And then on the back, I've got this piece of handmade paper. I just embossed this top panel, so that pulls out for lots of tucking space or writing room. And then the back of the image has this map. It says the Journey of St. Paul. Here, just added another die cut to the page. Here I trimmed the side of this ledger sheet with some of that beautiful gold fabric and did some machine stitching along there. And then in there I've got this card that I made. And then what I did on the back is just fold this over and stitch down. And I've added this piece of vellum, dotted vellum. And I've had this sticker for a long time. It's like a pretty ornate framed sticker, and I just thought that looked nice on there. You can kind of peek through. And I thought this would just make some really nice private journaling space underneath there. If you wrote on that sheet, you could see it nicely through here just a little bit. And then I backed it with this old book page. Here I've got this page made from some treated napkin. And then here I've got another intricate die cut cross. On this page I used this piece of linen, embroidered linen on the top for my top tuck. And then in there I made this piece. It folds out. It's from an image of an old, some wallpaper panels. And I just added those onto pieces of linen and then strung this ribbon through. And then on the back, I've got, it's kind of interactive. There, where I strung the ribbon, you can use those as little belly bands to put things in. So I've got this prayer book page in there. And then I've got some more little writing pieces down there and another book page. And these three are actually pockets that I made. So this is from some old ticking, and I did some hand stitching on those to stitch down lace pieces. And here I've got a little metal that I stitched on there. Some more lace that I stitched down. And then in this one I have this small image of the Vatican. And then those can just fold back up again. I did a little bit of stenciling with paste on this page. This is an old 1700s book page in French. In the center of this signature, I added some beads to my strings. And then on the pockets, I just stenciled with some gold ink and added a little embellishment on each one. And then in the pockets, I've added these rather large journaling cards. This is all, okay, this is a postcard. This one is, looks like a French one, I believe. I have some French and some Italian. Yes, it says Paris, so that's probably French. And then these two journaling cards are two separate pieces of the same image. And so I just made separate cards out of each side. I gave them these pretty frames. And then I added some embossed paper on the back and just created these belly bands with some lace so Kimberly can tuck whatever she wants into those. Then there's this one. Here I created a top tuck with some ticking, added this little image on there. Again, some stenciling on the page. And then in there I created this card. And then this is another book page. Here on this page, I just added this piece of linen that I stamped with the cross. Here I've got another flip out, and in there I have this waxed image of Mary and then Jesus and John the Baptist. Here I added this beautiful cutwork piece to the top of the page. And then on this page, I've just got a fabric tab on the bottom. On this page, I tucked in this journaling card that I made. I punched some holes in the side here and just threaded some velvet ribbon through there. And then on the back, I've got this braille paper and a label. And that's tucked in this straw paper fold out. So here's, again, a place to tuck things and lots of room for writing. And then that's the page in the back. There's a page from a floral book that I have. In this page, I just embellished with a little bit of velvet ribbon and a button. On this page, I've got this beautiful background paper from Raindrop Lila. And then I have this postcard of Notre Dame. And then I created this card. In the back, I took these heart images and just created a double pocket there. And then in those, I tucked some cards that I made. On this side of the page, I have this fabric flip made from fabric from Roxy Creations. And I just added this little hat pin here and clipped on another piece of fabric and some dotted tulle. And then underneath there, I've got a couple items that I clipped in. This is what the page looks like. So I've got this image and this one. Just back that with some beautiful old ledger paper. Here I created a belly band with some fabric and paper. This was actually like a divider in an old filing system, so it's got this brass tab on there. And then I've just got some antique pieces of ephemera in that pocket. Here I created a little tuck with this grosgrain ribbon, and I just added a button there so that can tuck nicely in there and stay tight. And then I've got this journaling card that I made. I embellished this page with a wax seal. And then here's another book page from that art book that I have. This page I embellished with a die cut cross and just added a little rhinestone in the middle. Here I made a couple of circle pockets. And then in this one, I've put this French cabinet card of this girl making her first communion. It's got some beautiful graphics on the back side. And then up in this pocket, I've got a couple of original prayer cards. Some really pretty graphics on there. Here I just created a small little flip with this beautiful handkerchief fabric. In the center of the signature, I created a couple of large pockets with this ledger paper. And then in those pockets, I've got this book page. And then I backed this side with this nativity scene. And then I created these two cards. They're kind of botanical in nature. Added some ribbon to the top. And then on the backs of these, I've got some little belly bands and these little cards with some scriptures in them. Here I created a corner tuck with this beautiful image. And then on this page, I just embellished it with some cheesecloth and this beautiful lacy piece. Here I created a pocket with this piece of lace and just added this little medallion on there. And then that's the image behind. And then in there, I've got this vintage piece. It looks like a Christmas card of some sort, but it does have a calendar in the middle, and that's dated 1955. And then I created this little piece. It just folds up, and I did some stenciling on the back. And this is what the image looks like. Here I have this little card, prayer card, and I just added some lace to the top of that. I of this image, and I just added a little bit of this cut work again on that page. On this page, I created some belly bands with this beautiful trim. And then in there, I tucked this piece. I'm just kind of holding it together on the top with this clip. And I just hung a couple of beads off of there. This opens up into kind of a document keeper type of piece. So I just folded the paper around, did some stenciling on there, stitched it down, and then in there I put a piece of old French document, this waxed image, and then I have this piece of old ledger paper, and then I've got this very delicate piece of lined onion skin paper. It looks like it's cracking there by the fold, but I think it'll hold in there if you're careful with it. And then I backed the whole piece with this old 1700s French book page. And this is the image on this side. Here I created a pocket on the page. In this pocket, I've got a postcard of a cathedral in France. And then I created this tag. Here I added in for my page this beautiful piece of lace. And then I've got a little side tuck here that I trimmed up with some trim. And then in there I've got this image of Jesus and the apostles. And I just added a little cloth tab to the side and left some writing room on the back. In the center of the signature, I put these two little doily pieces on here. I thought that would be a fun place to do some writing or put some quotes or scripture in there. And then on my strings, I've just got these two little paper pieces. Then here I've got another side tuck that I put some trim on. And then in there, I've got this back side that can be used for writing. I've got a wax seal on there. And then there's a beautiful landscape image on this side. Here on this page, it's got this beautiful image on the background. And then this is an Italian postcard that I got when I was in Florence. And then I created this piece from an envelope. So I just did some collaging on the front, put this beautiful angel image looking through the window. And then on the back side, I created this pocket. And then in there, I just tucked this fragment of a book page. On this side of the page, I clipped on some original prayer cards. Here I did some stenciling on some craft paper for my embellishment, and this flips out. It's a page from one of my books, and this is Jerusalem. I don't know what the time period is. It says in the time of Solomon. Here I created a top tuck with this, it's actually an old French piece, sampler page with some trims on it. And I just added the little cross on there. That's what the background page looks like. And then in there, I've got another little journaling card and another book page. I love that scene. And that takes us to the last page where I just did a little bit of embellishment with a gold doily. So I hope you enjoyed that flip through of this journal. I appreciate you coming along with me. It was a little bit of a longer video, but I'm glad that you came along with me today. And until next time, bye-bye.